Hey everybody, welcome back to the SuperBake podcast. I'm your host, Baker. Let's talk about stuff. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Today, talking about Don't Look Up. So, had the chance to watch this movie a little while back. So, I wanted to put my thoughts together and kind of get a review going for this one. Watched this movie on Netflix, of course. Movie looks like it came out December 24th of last year. Although I think it did have a few small releases earlier in the year, like in New York. I think it premiered December 5th, and then I think in some select theaters. But directed by Adam McKay, who also wrote the screenplay for it and also produced the ylmovie, along with Kevin Messick. Huge star-studded cast: Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Rob Morgan, Jonah Hill, Mark Rylance, Tyler Perry, Timothy Chalamet, Meryl Streep, Kate Blanchett. I mean, it's a huge list of actors and actresses in this movie. Basically, to kind of give a brief synopsis of the story, basically, Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence play two astronomers who discover a large comet that is essentially on a collision course with the Earth. And basically, it's kind of similar to the Michael Bay movie, Armageddon, where basically it's a planet-killing comet, so it's going to essentially wipe out all life on the planet, and they are essentially trying to convince the president, played by Meryl Streep, in a pretty humorous role for her, I think, and then also Jonah Hill, who plays her Secretary of State, and then also her son. Basically, they're trying to convince them, as well as the rest of the population, that this is going to happen, and basically are frustrated throughout the entire movie at how reluctant people are at believing them or even trying to do anything about it. A lot of scientists have given this movie a decent amount of praise, basically saying that it's a pretty accurate depiction of trying to convince people of climate change. The movie is basically a satire of climate change, and that's kind of the main message in this movie. And that's something that I would definitely agree with, is that this movie feels like a very accurate portrayal of how people would respond to this exact situation. One of the things that happens immediately is that the entire country, the United States and really a lot of the world, become just super divided over this. They don't, a lot of people don't really believe this is going to happen, and so they start chanting "Don't look up," and hence the title of the movie. In other words, they are so adamant that this isn't real that they refuse to look up and see the comet, even though at one point in the movie, once it gets close enough, you can actually see it in the night sky. And that's basically the plot of the movie. Is just them, Leo and Jennifer, trying to convince the population that this is real, and basically trying to figure out ways that they can try to stop it from happening. So it is kind of a satirical, more comical version of the movie Armageddon. A lot of things about this movie I enjoyed. There were a few things about it that I don't know, that didn't quite mesh for me, I guess. It's a good movie. It's not quite what I would call a great movie, though. I don't really feel like it had much of a lasting impact for me personally. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that would disagree with me on this. In fact, I know there are, because this movie's received quite a few nominations. It was named one of the top 10 films of 2021 by the National Board of Review in American Film. Received 4 nominations at the 94th Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Received 4 Golden Globe nominations, including Best Picture for Musical or Comedy. And also received 6 Critics' Choice Awards, including Best Picture. So, I mean, it's garnering a lot of favor among people, critics and fans alike. A lot of those, I think, are still pending, so we'll have to kind of see how that plays out. I certainly think that it deserves a lot of the praise that it's getting. I just think, for me personally, I don't know if I would consider this one of my favorite films. Number one, it's 2.5 hours long, and it definitely feels like it. There were definitely several points in the movie where I felt like I was checking, where I was at on the time bar on Netflix, because I don't want to say that I was getting bored, but it's not as engaging in some scenes as it is with others. But there were a few highlights for me in this movie. The first one being it's very well acted, in my opinion, with the notable performances I think coming from Kate Blanchett, who I knew it was her because like I recognized her because I already knew she was going to be in the movie, so I already kind of knew who she was in there. But man, she looks good in this movie, like really good. They did a good job of making her look like like those news personalities that you see on the dozens of different news channels, across across YouTube and stuff like that, and on TV networks. So they did a great job on that. Like if you didn't know better, I could definitely understand where some people wouldn't recognize her. And her little bits with her and Tyler Perry as her co-host, I think, are definitely some of the highlights of the film. Just the little comments they make to each other whenever they're about to go on live TV is just great. Leonardo DiCaprio, I think he's one of the highlights of this movie as well. His performance as kind of the awkward scientist is great. Dr. Mindy, I think is his name. Like he's fantastic. And there's of course, it kind of goes without saying. There's going to be some spoilers for this. There's a great moment where he kind of becomes the most liked person in the United States because when he goes to interview with Kate Blanchett and Tyler Perry to kind of give his insight on the comet and stuff like that, people like really respond well to him, and basically most people because they think because it's Leonardo DiCaprio, they basically are calling him a astronomer I'd like to fuck, AILF, and it's just great. Like his reaction to that, the way he responds to that is just it's so great. And then Jennifer Lawrence, she's great in this as well as, sort of, she's kind of the more serious of the two between her and Leo. Leo's character kind of starts to, in a sense, he kind of starts to eat up a lot of the notoriety that he receives from people. Whereas Jennifer Lawrence's character, you can tell she actually really does care about what's going to happen and actually gives a shit about trying to get people to pay attention to this. And you can definitely see the frustration in her character. And I would imagine she is probably supposed to be representative of scientists in real life who are trying to convince people of climate change who just don't want to admit it, and kind of the frustration they feel from that. So, but she does that role very well. And then of course Meryl Streep as the president of the United States. It's Meryl Streep. She's a legend, and every scene that she's in, she's just eating it up. You can tell she's having a lot of fun playing this character, and she's just chewing up the scenery every time she's on camera. The scenes with her and Jonah Hill are just fantastic. Like just the banter back and forth between them, the little comments. Like this is probably one of those movies I may have to watch it again a second time just to kind of catch some of the little comments that the characters make that I missed the first time. So, but her role in this is great. She's the president. She's kind of coming into an election year, so she's trying to ramp up support for her campaign. And like she sees the comet as more of at first she sees it as like shit, this is going to lose me the campaign. Like it's more of a nuisance for her. Like she's more worried about the impact it'll have on her chances of being reelected versus actually doing something about it and the impact it'll have on the planet. So. And then, of course, later in the movie, she pulls a 180 and figures out how she can use the comet to basically garner favor for her. And to me, this feels like a very accurate portrayal of how this would go down in real life. I feel like if an asteroid or a comet were really about to hit the Earth, this movie feels almost painfully close to how people in the U.S. at least would respond to it. And just like there's also they make note of a lot of other things in the movie too, like just how dependent people are on smartphone technology and social media platforms. Like they have like their own social media platforms in this, which I can't remember what a lot of them are called, but like there's one that's like it's owned by this character I think he's definitely supposed to be like a weird amalgamation parody of the big tech tycoons like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. And like he owns this tech company called Bashlight, I think is what it's called. And his character is just like, the best way I can describe him is he reminds me of like Mike, if you took Mike Pence and gave him the voice of Jordan Peterson. For those of you who don't know Jordan Peterson, he's a psychiatrist from Canada, I believe. And I've seen him on a few YouTube channels and stuff like that, but just like he has kind of like a high-pitched voice, and just like it's like if you took his voice and gave it to Mike Pence, and that's what this character makes me think of. And it's just like every scene that he's in, if I close my eyes, I hear Jordan Peterson talking, and it makes me laugh. Like he just walks in, he's just like, "Oh, we're studying the asteroid. We're or the comet. We're gonna drill and get we're gonna get those resources." And it kills me. Um, I love his character is just so, it's like he's annoying, but like in a funny way, to me at least. Anyways, for those of you, if you watch it, if you look up who Jordan Peterson is, I think you'll get what I mean by that if you don't know who he is before this review. But anyways, he has a lot of great comedic moments in the show too, and it's like he has like a very obvious control over the U.S. president, which I feel like you probably get a lot of that now. Like I always kind of got that impression where it's like big business tycoons probably have a lot more control over the United States than we would care to admit. And I feel like there's kind of that jab in the movie as well. But yeah, and then Ariana Grande, her character is great. I mean, she basically plays herself in the movie, but her character name, like, there's this great scene where she writes a song about the comet that's about to hit the Earth because she wants people to be aware of it, and like she writes a song about it. And the thing is, it's actually a good song. It actually is pretty good. It's got some good beats, but it's just like when you listen to the lyrics, it's just ridiculous. Those little details they have in the movie, I think, really make it great. And then, just a couple of highlights for the movie for me, at least. Again, like I've noted the acting portion, and then, of course, how this feels like a realistic take on how people would respond to this. And also just like, I feel like the conversations people have about this in the movie, the dialogue feels pretty genuine, I think, in some scenes. I mean, the movie, it walks a very interesting line where it's between satire and dark comedy, but also like kind of just depressing in a sense. So not to give too much away with the ending, but it's got a very dark ending, which kind of surprised me. I wasn't expecting that with this movie, but in a sense, I kind of respect it for going down that route. It could have taken the easy way out, and it didn't. So I always respect movies that take a little bit of a risk with their endings. And then, of course, there is kind of an after credits scene, which is just batshit nuts and also hilarious and kind of disgusting too. But I'll leave that to you if you want to watch the movie and see for yourself. And then, of course, another highlight for me is I love the obvious jabs this movie makes. It's just social media and technology in general, as well as like kind of the upper 1%. So again, you'll see when you watch it. As far as like negatives for this movie go, like I said before, I kind of alluded to this at the beginning of the review. For me personally, I know everybody's going to have a different opinion about this, but this movie didn't really have much of a lasting impact on me. I think it's a very good movie. I just wouldn't quite call it a great movie, in my opinion. It has that uncomfortable effect where I feel like after I watch it for so long, I'm kind of aware of how long the movie has been going on. Like I said before, I was checking the time to see how much of the movie was left, and it definitely feels like 2.5 hours. It feels like a long movie, so it doesn't flow quite well, in my opinion. Also, just some of the casting in the movie, at least for me, feels kind of random. Like, Timothée Chalamet's character, he doesn't really have anything to do in this. He's kind of just like a skateboard punk who kind of develops sort of a quasi-romantic relationship with Jennifer Lawrence's character, but it doesn't really go anywhere, which, okay, I guess not every single character in a movie or show has to have, a great purpose for the story, but it just seems weird to have this big actor like Timothée Chalamet, who's coming off of Dune, and, he's really kind of coming into his own in Hollywood. It's just kind of odd to have someone that big in such a small role. And kind of another example too is Ron Perlman, who, again, I know he's not a big actor, but his role in the movie is pretty minor, although it is great. I'll give the movie this much. Ron Perlman, his role in this movie is hilarious. He plays like this old astronaut who's way behind in the times, and every scene he's in is fantastic. But these do feel like two roles where you could have really just had anybody in them. I guess for me, like, just the casting, it kind of just feels like they're being misused. It's like you have these two talented actors, and I just feel like you're kind of wasting their potential. Also, I'm just a big fan of Ron Perlman, so I would love to just see him used more in this movie. You know, a talent like his, it's just kind of just I hate that he's not used more. So, but I would say by and large, most of the performances in here are good, and most of the actors and actresses are used well. But yeah, and then also I've kind of said this, or I haven't said this before on the podcast, but this is kind of an opinion I've had on Leonardo DiCaprio. And while I do think his performance in this movie is good, I just kind of feel like it's sort of just another one of those roles where he just kind of yells. And I kind of feel like he's kind of becoming known for that now. Where in every movie he's in, it seems like there's always like at least one or two scenes where he just kind of yells like over the top. Like he does it in Wolf of Wall Street, he does it in Django Unchained, he does it here. I'm pretty sure he has several scenes like that in The Departed. And I like Leonardo DiCaprio, I really do. I think he's a really good actor. I don't think he's a great actor. And I know a lot of people out there are probably going to hate me for saying that. I'm not saying I think he's bad or anything like that, but every time I see him in a movie, I feel like I'm just watching Leo playing a character. I never feel like I'm watching the character. This movie, I do feel like he does kind of disappear into the role a little bit better than what he has in the past, but I just feel like I always see Leonardo DiCaprio playing a character. And not to go on too much of a tangent, but for me, the way I always kind of can tell when I'm watching a great performance is when I feel like when I forget that I'm watching an actor in a role. So like a perfect example would be like Heath Ledger as the Joker. Whenever I watch The Dark Knight, I don't see Heath Ledger. I see the Joker. And that to me is the mark of a great performance. Same thing with Hannibal Lecter. I don't see Anthony Hopkins. I just see Hannibal Lecter. Those are two examples of the actors disappearing in the role and becoming the character. And with Leo, I feel like I never quite get that. Like, I feel like he gets close. He gets really close in a lot of different performances. But just I feel like he never quite reaches that threshold. But I like the guy, and I think he's fine in here. But I just feel like his performance in here, there's a scene where he's being interviewed about the comment, and it's near the end of the movie where he kind of loses his shit because he also, like Jennifer Lawrence, starts to get frustrated with how people are just not taking this seriously, and it kind of comes to a boiling point at this scene. And it turns into one of those scenes where it's just Leo kind of screaming, at the top of his lungs. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just kind of feel like that's kind of what a lot of his performances are for me. If you disagree with me, that's fine. That's just kind of how I feel about the guy. But I like him. I don't have a problem with him as a person. That's just kind of my opinion of him as an actor. But yeah, that scene kind of reminded me of that. I'm not necessarily docking the movie points for that. I just wanted to note it. But anyways, yeah, like I guess I would recommend this movie. I think it's entertaining. I think it's definitely got some valid points to make, and it's an interesting satirical look at the world as we know it today, and how easily manipulated people can be, and how dependent we are on things like social media. And the movie is it's an interesting take on that. So I would say give it a view for, if nothing else, than for that. It's definitely worth a watch for sure. And I'm sure there's people out there that probably think that this deserves all the nominations that it's getting, and probably would give it higher praise than what I'm giving it to. So I guess watch it and kind of come to your own conclusion about that. So yeah, I will say for me, it's going to be a lukewarm recommendation. So, and then off of that topic, another double feature. I saw that they have announced that there is going to be a Bioshock movie being made by Netflix. So, yeah, this was kind of similar to the thing with when I talked about King of the Hill. I had heard rumors a long time ago about a Bioshock movie potentially happening, but I didn't really know a lot of details beyond that. So, yeah, it looks like the Netflix is going to be working with the game developer Take-Two Interactive. And I guess from what I can tell, it looks like they've been trying to get the screening rights closed on this for about a year. But it looks like it is happening, but there's no writer, no filmmaker is on board for this at this time. So basically all they're saying is that it's confirmed that it's happening, it's in the works, but there's really nothing else. There's really no further information on it. So on that, I would say it's a safe assumption that this isn't going to be happening anytime soon. But really excited about this. Huge fan of the Bioshock series. Love Bioshock 1. Really enjoyed Bioshock 2. Wasn't a huge fan of it, but I mean, I liked it. I don't remember a whole lot about it other than the fact that you played as a Big Daddy. And then Bioshock Infinite is just, I love that game so much. It's such a fantastic game. I love the series. And I just, the idea of there being a movie, I think this is definitely something that could really benefit from being made. Well, I know it's not going to be a series. I almost feel like a series would be more beneficial for this story than a movie. But then again, there's still a lot that they can do with this. I haven't read any details as far as like if this is going to be just based on the first movie or if it's going to be some kind of combination of, or the first game or a combination of all three games or what or how it's going to work. I would guess the first game. But yeah, this I think there's definitely a lot of potential there that they can do with it. The visuals alone I think are going to be great. Like the idea of seeing the city of Rapture being depicted in live action, I think is definitely exciting to see. Like I'm curious to see how they would take that underwater quote unquote utopia and put it and how special effects could possibly bring that to life. And then I think for me the most exciting aspect would be of course the Big Daddies. Like just seeing them in live action to me would be so cool. Just those iconic drill hands that they have and then seeing them in gunfights would be really cool. And definitely a lot of potential there for some really good, creepy, atmospheric television. So I will definitely be keeping a close eye on this for sure. And my hope is that hopefully this might bring another game into our near future. Bioshock Infinite came out a long time ago. I think at least over 5 years ago. I think I believe it was like on the PS3 era, which is what I played it on. And yeah, it's been a long time since we've had any game from in the Bioshock series. So I'm hoping that maybe this movie will really kind of bring people's attention back to this series and maybe up their revenue enough that maybe they would be willing to make another movie. I can definitely say for certain that if they make another Bioshock movie, I'll certainly get it. And I'm also kind of curious to see like what the casting would look like for this as well. I mean, I got the main character from the game. I mean, really, you can get anybody for it. From what I remember, the character from the first game, he does have dialogue, but there's not really much to him. He's more of just kind of a vessel for the player to experience the story through. But I mean, there's a lot they can do with that. I mean, look at the Resident Evil series, the original series with Mia Jovovich. I mean, those don't follow the games hardly at all, I don't think, other than like the character names they reference. But Hollywood made a huge spectacle of that. So there's a lot of potential here. And then the prospect of like maybe Bioshock Infinite potentially being on the big screen would be really cool. That's something that I think would be really cool to see, like on an IMAX screen. The idea of being like in the floating city of Columbia with the I don't remember what the Big Daddies are called in that game. They're basically Big Daddies, but they have a different name. I just can't remember what they're called though. Handyman? Is that it? I think it's Handyman. But just the big aerial combat fights, seeing those on like even like a 4K TV, I think would be really badass. So, yeah, I think this is definitely something that hopefully I would love to see a series out of this. Honestly, I feel like a series would work better. I mean, I'm glad that we're getting something, but I almost feel like a series would work better for this than a movie. Just because you can flesh out the world a lot more. It would give you a lot more room to work with. Well, like I think just some of the things that were in the gameplay. Like, for example, like the combat. Combat was a big part of the Bioshock games, at least for me. I mean, that's what I spent the most time doing, was trying to take out Big Daddies and the little mutant people that you fight, wandering around and then trying to collect all the little things around there and just exploring Rapture. So I'm kind of curious too if this is going to lean more towards the horror genre or action. So I'm guessing it'll be kind of a mix of the two because that's kind of what the game was. So, but I would love to see if they kind of go for more of the horror side. I love a good scary movie or show, so I would love to see this. I'd love to see them really try to flesh out some of the scarier elements of the game. Like the idea of making like the Big Daddies, these big, creepy, hulking monsters in this movie, I think would be really cool. So I'm hoping maybe we can get some really interesting, tense combat scenes and some scary scenes out of those guys. I'm a Big Daddy enthusiast. Like the idea of seeing those guys, I'm so excited about that. So this definitely has my interest. So I'll be keeping a close eye on this. Hopefully we'll hear more about this as time goes on. Hopefully this actually does happen and it's not something that gets put into development hell. I guess time will tell on that. So, all right, guys. Probably a shorter episode than what I've been doing lately, but if you like what you heard, feel free to like and subscribe. Once again, I'm on Anchor, Spotify, and YouTube. So I'll catch you guys next time. Later.